All right. How's everyone doing? Okay, first and foremost, I wanted to thank Magdalena and Loic for creating this beautiful gathering and also hosting all of us here. Again, my name is Linda. I'm the founder and CEO of Quantum Temple. We are a Web3 company focusing on the preservation of cultural heritage. Maybe a little bit about myself before we get started. I'm originally from Italy. I'm a political economist by training, and I spent the last 13 years working in emerging markets, mostly between Southeast Asia and the Middle East. I spent the last 6 years working with the government of Dubai, an organization called Dubai Future Foundation, where we were creating a deep tech ecosystem since 2016, including working with an early application in the field of blockchain technology. So today we're going to talk about the potential of Web3 and specifically the use of blockchain application in the case of heritage. And we'll also be giving some case studies from our work at Quantum Temple. Okay, starting with definition. So UNESCO defines cultural heritage in two brackets. On the one hand, we have tangible heritage and intangible heritage. For tangible heritage, we mean anything that we can physically touch. So that includes things like ceremonial decorative artifacts, or on the other hand, things like World Heritage Sites. And then on the intangible heritage side, it would be things like rituals, dance, ceremonies. Also, traditional ecological knowledge is a very big one that often doesn't get as recognized. And if you think about it, most of heritage has been historically supported through local economies. And in today's world, most of it is actually funded through tourism. In fact, 1 in 2 people travel for cultural purposes to connect with a culture from another country, right? However, despite tourism being an enormous economic generator representing almost $10 trillion industry, United Nations World Tourism Organization estimates that every $100 that are spent on a tour holiday, actually only $5 stay in that country when that country is a developing country, which means that there's a lot of value capturing that is hidden that we actually don't even know about it's happening. So this value capturing is heavily disincentivizing current and future generations to stay involved in the practice of their own cultural traditions because of the lack of digital distributions and financial incentives, and therefore kind of threatening the extinction of heritage for posterity. So if we want to quantify the problem from a macro global level, kind of giving 2 big important examples from tangible heritage, the UNESCO actually estimates that $10 billion every year are traded in cultural property to fund illicit trafficking. So, and unfortunately, a lot of it is actually going to fund terrorism. And there's definitely, we're going to talk about how interesting digital solutions are tackling this. On the other hand, things like climate change impact is currently threatening almost 1/3 of the world cultural heritage, mostly World Heritage Sites. That's why countries I'm not sure if anyone has ever heard the country of Tuvalu, which is in the middle of the Pacific, is now thinking about digitizing their old heritage because they're going to have to move in another country because their land is going to get submerged because of climate change. And then on the intangible heritage sites, if you think about languages, there's about 6,000 languages that are spoken today, and actually half of that are at risk of not being passed over to the current generations. And so we also know that language carry knowledge, carry cosmology, and when the language dies, all those things die with them as well. So what do we do? What are the solutions that are available? These were the questions that I was asking myself when during the pandemic I took I had the privilege to be in Indonesia for some time, and I realized the dramatic effects that these challenges that were happening were even brought into sharper focus as a result of the pandemic. So in 2021, we probably all remember how NFTs and Web3 really took off with the adoption of digital artists. And we started thinking that actually blockchain provides a lot of really interesting solutions, especially in the field of heritage preservation and also unlocking new opportunity for heritage practitioners. We call them cultural keepers and local institutions. And today we're going to just quickly address, on the one hand, the protection of records from archival purposes for posterity, and then on the other hand, also unlocking transparent regenerative finance to incentivize, again, the younger generations. So the three most important characteristics about blockchain in the fields of heritage is that blockchain is immutable, is verifiable, and is public. And this is really important because we are using this technology can be used to save information so that the data that is saved is actually protected against things like, again, climate change, conflict, or censorship, because no one can actually take it down. And that also helps to guarantee provenance and authenticity for, again, things like cultural goods or the illicit traffic of cultural assets that we saw before. And it guarantees that the access to these assets will be forever public for the future generations. So when it comes to NFTs, which I'm sure everyone knows, so non-fungible tokens as a proof of ownership of digital and physically backed assets, tokenization enables three things. So on the one hand, value creation, distribution, market access. And this is very important because through provenance and authenticity, we can guarantee higher equity in the value chain for the cultural keepers through the transparent transmission of royalties across first and secondary sales. So a little bit about Quantum Temple and the work that we're doing. Again, we're a Web3 platform where anyone can learn, connect, and preserve cultural heritage. Our vision is to honor the lineages of cultural keepers and ensure that their knowledge and traditions and art forms will be embedded in our future. And we're going to do so by developing the first decentralized record of heritage that can unlock also regenerative funding through Web3. We're very grateful for UNWTO, the United Nations World Tourism Organization, for actually having awarded us the Awake Tourism Challenge just a couple of months ago, and we're currently going through the acceleration program in Switzerland. But in fact, this is super hard, right? Like none of this would be possible without a truly multidisciplinary alliance, which brings together, on the one hand, obviously local communities of cultural keepers, also local institutions. So we work in partnership mostly with ministries of tourism and culture, local NGOs, academics such as historians and anthropologists, and content creators to collectively create NFTs collection that represents expressions of both tangible and intangible heritage in a way that can unlock proceeds for the communities in perpetuity. And on the other hand, we're also building, obviously, a community of patrons and philanthropists and conscious travelers who are really committed to the positive stewardship of heritage by experiencing digital, physical, and experiential NFTs. So we're not going to go through any of this, but just to give you a highlight of how this actually works. So we built 4 different NFT-based initiatives. One is about Web3 inclusion and refi, or regenerative finance, through our membership NFTs, which we're going to give some quick examples later. Also preserving, as we were saying earlier, heritage on-chain through our cultural heritage NFTs. And then currently we're working on our next 2 initiatives, which are artifacts NFTs. Maybe someone has heard about PBTs, or physically backed tokens. So actually digitizing artifacts to revitalize handmade and provide supply chain finance to local artists. And then experiences NFTs as NFT tickets that can give access to local experiences hosted by the local communities. So very quickly, cultural heritage NFTs. So we are, again, tokenizing expressions of tangible and intangible heritage through digital art. And we do it, again, in partnership with local communities and anthropologists. Our first pilot is called, the first pilot collection is called Paths to Alango, which we actually launched here in Paris 2 months ago. The Paths to Alango is based out of Bali, Indonesia. We worked in partnership with 11 local communities, and over 5,000 people were actually involved and impacted, and also the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy of Indonesia. The collection was curated by Professor Steve Lansing, who's also on our advisory board, and he's a very renowned cultural anthropologist who was also involved in the creation of Jatiluwih rice fields as a World Heritage Site back in 2012. So right now I'm going to show you very quick the collection trailer to give you an example of what this looks like. So let's see if this works.
Operation Galar for Beauty.
It's doing that now. Let's try again. I listen things at 2x, but this is like maybe 10x.
Operation Gallinar.
It's like, yeah, it's not happening. Yeah, let's try next one. Anyways, all of this is on YouTube, so we'll definitely share. If you join our community or you check out on YouTube, you can find it later. So for the first collection, we actually focus on visual anthropology, using short ethnographic films to showcase how do we actually tokenize heritage on-chain. So the idea was, again, using visual anthropology to record in an authentic way how those traditions, forms, again, of tangible and intangible heritage are expressed, and then also putting the curatorial information on the metadata on-chain so that it will be forever there, available for next generation to learn about beautiful traditions. So the first NFTs that you see here is called Royal Topeng. It's showcasing a mass drama from Bali, and we had the pleasure of working with Professor Mare Bandem, who is one of the actually first Balinese to ever get an ethnomusicology PhD outside of the country, and is definitely one of the greatest dancers of his generation. He's wearing a very important mask, which was gifted to his family by the last king of Bangli from East Bali, and he's like 250 years old. And all of that information is actually available on chain. And during our launch event here in Paris, we were very excited that actually the first NFT was sold for 53.59 ETH, which at that time conversion equaled roughly $97,500. And what's amazing about that is that through tokenization, we can actually achieve end-to-end transparency in the distribution, if that's the outcome, and definitely, for sure, it is the outcome that we wanted to drive. So all of the funds are distributed according to the royalty splits that you see here, and at the auction, like literally 2 minutes after the auction was over, the community was able to receive these funds on their wallet. So we have actually onboarded the 11 communities on the pilot on their first regulated, compliant crypto wallet, obviously available in native language in Indonesia, which also integrates with their bank account to show that, in fact, end-to-end transparency is possible. Okay, so another example would be the Bell to Create Alango. This is actually going live in a couple of weeks. But we work with the last community of blacksmith. They're actually called Pande. It's a lineage that traces back almost 1,000 years, potentially more. And they're an ancient clan of priest metalsmiths, and there's about 10 left that know about this tradition. And we're trying to use, again, Web3 to revitalize and empower this community to carry forward their knowledge. So. Great. Okay, last one. So on the full moon of the first month is actually the NFT that is currently up on our auction and is representing the famous temple of Tirtempul. I'm sure anyone that has been to Bali has probably been there. It's a very dear temple, one of the most important place for Malukat ceremony, which is the water purification, very important part of ritual life in Bali. And the proceeds are going to be used to actually sustain, especially the living heritage at the temple after 2 years of no COVID, and also restore certain parts of the temple itself. So let's see if it plays. Okay, great. So kind of coming next, we talked a little bit earlier about our membership NFTs. So the most important thing is so Web3 is enabling a new form of democratization for bottom-up project financing. And so it's really interesting to be able to provide access to anyone in the world that wants to participate, whether it's retail investor or institutional impact investors, to really bridge the considerable financial gap that exists when it comes to bridging things like digital divide or the climate gap, for example. So our membership NFT is actually represented by the famous symbol of the cosmic egg, and it enables anyone that collects it to be participating in our impact fund DAO, and the idea is to really drive Web3 inclusion and also regenerative finance. So our core pillars from the fund are really focused on four. On the one hand is really on Web3 inclusion, so how do we make sure that communities on the ground will have self-sovereign access to these tools. So in order to do so, they need to have access to infrastructure, whether it's like digital or energy. Remember, a lot of communities that still practice heritage live in rural areas and are heavily underserved, and not always the priority of national infrastructure development programs. So how do we bridge that gap? And then also providing access to regulated, compliant, again, crypto on-ramps and off-ramp solutions so that they can have access to their own financial services. Again, these communities oftentimes don't have access to basic financial services, especially in LATAM. 51% of the population actually is fully underserved or completely, it's either underserved or fully not included. And then third, very importantly, like how do we make sure that they have the knowledge to actually use these tools for their own benefit? And then third, we're also, again, investing on other projects that involve heritage revitalization and also nature conservation. So, for example, the first project that we funded is about adapting rice farming techniques. Obviously, everyone in Bali, of course. So everyone that has been to Bali obviously knows that rice fields are everywhere, but rice fields contribute about 11% of total emission. And actually, with our anthropologists and Wayan Alit Artawiguna, they've found a technique that by adapting the rice farming, they're able to reduce emissions and increase rice yields. So look at the results of the pilot. It's very promising. We're going to publish the results in 2 weeks and presenting it at Princeton as well. But so far, the expected impact is like 70% of reduction in methane, which is actually the most dangerous greenhouse gas, and 23% increase in rice yields. And so you can see that we're making some good progress there. But the results can be very, very impactful because this can scale not only in that area of Bali where it's currently being piloted, but also potentially across all rice cultures all over Southeast Asia. Okay, lastly, I wanted to leave you with a quote. If every culture is by definition a vital branch of our family tree, and if given the opportunity, a source of inspiration and hope for the future. Thank you so much. If this interest calls you, please join our community. Find us at quantumtemple.io, scan the QR code, and love to talk to you more about if you're interested in the topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. That was super amazing. What a wonderful project. And when you say join the community, what does that mean, actually? Like a WhatsApp group? Are you doing a DAO? Or how are you inviting people to be part of it?
So Justine is here, calling you. Raise your hand. Okay. So no, we're building our community. Obviously, we do all things Web3. So we're on Discord. We have we also have events that are happening in person. So we did our first one in Paris. We're doing one more in Paris. So it'll be announced soon, and other events also around the world. So join us digitally, and hopefully, you can. There's multiple ways to get involved, whichever is your calling.
Thank you. It was amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah.